The rain drummed steadily against the windows of the Grandview Hotel, a modest establishment nestled in the heart of Cedar Falls, Iowa. The lobby, though worn around the edges, maintained an old-world charm with its mahogany furniture and faded Persian rugs. Crystal chandeliers, their brilliance dimmed by decades of use, cast a warm amber glow across the reception area where weary travelers sought refuge from the November storm. Nicolas Cage stood at the front desk, his weathered leather jacket still damp from the brief sprint from his rental car. At 59, the acclaimed actor carried himself with a quiet dignity that spoke of countless journeys and hard-earned wisdom. His eyes, though tired from the long drive from Chicago, held the unmistakable spark of someone who had lived fully and deeply. He was here not for work, but for something far more personal, a pilgrimage of sorts to the small town where his late father had grown up, a place he had never visited but felt inexplicably drawn to explore. "I'd like a room for the night," Nicholas said softly to the young clerk behind the desk, his voice carrying the gravelly warmth that had captivated audiences for decades. "Something quiet if you have it." The clerk, barely out of college with nervous energy and an eagerness to please, fumbled with the computer keys. "Of course, Mr. He squinted at the registration form, clearly recognizing the face but uncertain if he should acknowledge it. "Just Nicholas will be fine," the actor replied with a gentle smile, understanding the young man's dilemma. He had long ago learned to navigate these moments with grace, neither encouraging nor discouraging recognition. As the paperwork was being processed, Nicholas's attention was drawn to a commotion near the elevator bank. Three well-dressed individuals, a middle-aged man in an expensive suit, his wife adorned in designer jewelry, and their teenage son clutching the latest smartphone, were engaged in what appeared to be a heated exchange with a hotel employee. The employee was a woman in her early 40s, her uniform clean but showing signs of long wear. Her name tag read Maria Santos, and she held a cleaning cart filled with towels and supplies. Her posture was respectful but weary, the stance of someone accustomed to weathering storms with quiet dignity. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and though her face showed the lines of hard work and responsibility, there was something unmistakably graceful about her presence. "This is absolutely unacceptable," the man in the suit was saying, his voice rising with each word. "We specifically requested fresh towels an hour ago, and here we are, still waiting. Do you people understand what customer service means?" Maria kept her voice steady and professional. "I sincerely apologize, sir. There was a delay with the laundry service due to the storm, but I can personally ensure you receive fresh towels within the next 10 minutes. I can also speak with the manager about 10 minutes. The woman interrupted, her diamond bracelet catching the light as she gestured dramatically. "We're paying premium rates for this room, and we shouldn't have to wait another second. This is exactly the kind of incompetence we've come to expect from places like this." The teenage son looked up from his phone long enough to add, "Yeah, like, how hard is it to bring towels? Maybe if you people actually cared about your jobs?" Nicholas felt something tighten in his chest as he watched the scene unfold. Maria's hands gripped the cart handle a bit tighter, but her expression remained composed, professional. There was something about her quiet strength that reminded him of his own mother, who had worked multiple jobs to support their family when he was growing up, enduring similar treatment from people who confused wealth with worth. I understand your frustration, Maria continued, her voice never losing its respectful tone despite the clear strain. I take full responsibility, and I want to make this right. If you'll give me just a moment. A moment? The man scoffed. We've already given you enough moments. Where's your manager? We want to speak to someone who actually has authority here. Someone who can explain why we're being served by... He paused, his eyes scanning Maria with undisguised disdain. By someone who clearly doesn't understand the standards expected at an establishment like this. The words hung in the air like a bitter fog. Nicholas felt his jaw clench as he recognized the coded language, the subtle but unmistakable prejudice woven into the complaint. He had witnessed this kind of behavior before, the way certain people wielded their privilege like a weapon, cutting down those they deemed beneath them. Maria's composure finally showed the first crack. Her eyes flashed with hurt and frustration, but she maintained her professional demeanor. Sir, I've been working in hospitality for 15 years, and I assure you that I understand 15 years of this? The woman interrupted with a laugh that held no warmth. Well, that certainly explains a lot, doesn't it? The teenage son snickered at his mother's remark, and Nicholas felt something snap inside him. He had remained silent long enough, watching this woman's dignity being systematically stripped away by people who had never known a day of real struggle in their lives. "Excuse me," Nicholas said, his voice cutting through the tension as he approached the group. His presence immediately shifted the dynamic of the encounter as all eyes turned to him. "I couldn't help but overhear, and I think there might be a misunderstanding here." The family's demeanor changed instantly upon recognizing him. The man's aggressive posture softened, the woman's harsh expression melted into a practiced smile, and even the teenager looked up from his phone with interest. "Oh my goodness," the woman gasped, her voice suddenly sweet as honey. "You're Nicolas Cage. I can't believe it. We're such huge fans. Honey, look, it's Nicolas Cage." The man extended his hand eagerly, his previous rudeness evaporating like morning mist. "Mr. Cage, what an honor." "I'm David Richardson, and this is my wife Jennifer and our son Kyle. We were just having a small issue with the service here, but nothing that can't be resolved, I'm sure." Nicholas accepted the handshake with a polite but measured smile, his eyes briefly meeting Maria's. He could see the complex mix of emotions playing across her face: embarrassment at the scene, gratitude for the intervention, and something else, something deeper that spoke to years of similar encounters. "It's nice to meet you," Nicholas replied to the family, before turning his attention to Maria. "I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name." "Maria Santos, sir," she replied, her voice soft but steady. "Maria," Nicholas repeated, as if testing the name on his tongue. "That's a beautiful name. It means beloved, doesn't it? From the Latin." A hint of surprise flickered in Maria's eyes and she nodded. "Yes, sir, it does." Nicholas turned back to the Richardson family, his expression thoughtful. "You know, I've stayed in hotels all over the world, from five-star resorts in Paris to small motels in the American heartland. And in my experience, the quality of service has nothing to do with the price tag on the building. It has everything to do with the character of the people working there." David Richardson shifted uncomfortably, sensing the subtle shift in tone. "Well, of course, we weren't suggesting..." "I've learned," Nicholas continued, his voice taking on the cadence of someone sharing a profound truth, "that the people who clean our rooms, who serve our meals, who work tirelessly behind the scenes to make our lives more comfortable. These are often the people with the most to teach us about dignity, about perseverance, about what really matters in life. He paused, allowing his words to settle before continuing. I once met a janitor in a theater in Los Angeles. Everyone walked past him like he was invisible. But when I stopped to talk to him, I discovered he was a former literature professor who had lost his position due to budget cuts and was working 3 jobs to support his disabled sister. He had more wisdom in his little finger than most of the executives I knew. Jennifer Richardson's smile had become strained, her earlier enthusiasm dampened by the direction of the conversation. Well, yes, of course, everyone deserves respect. Exactly, Nicolas said, his eyes finding Maria's again. Everyone deserves respect, especially someone who's been working in hospitality for 15 years. Someone who clearly takes pride in her work despite facing challenges that would break lesser spirits. The lobby had grown quiet except for the sound of rain against the windows and the soft hum of conversation from the hotel bar in the distance. Other guests had begun to take notice of the interaction, drawn by the presence of a celebrity, but staying to witness something far more meaningful. Kyle Richardson, who had been unusually quiet during this exchange, finally spoke up. Dad, maybe we should just go back to our room. The towels aren't that big a deal. David Richardson's face reddened slightly as he realized how the situation had evolved. Yes, well, perhaps we were a bit hasty in our reaction. The storm has everyone on edge, you understand. Nicolas nodded graciously. Storms have a way of revealing character, don't they? Both the kind that rage outside and the kind that rage within us. He turned to Maria with a warm smile. Maria, I wonder if I might ask you something. This hotel has such a wonderful atmosphere, such character. How long have you been part of the team here? Maria seemed surprised by the genuine interest in his voice. 8 years at the Grandview, sir. Before that, I worked at a small inn about an hour north of here. 8 years, Nicolas mused. That's a significant commitment. You must have seen this place through many changes, many seasons. Yes, sir, Maria replied, her posture relaxing slightly. I've seen families grow up, watched regular guests become like old friends. There's Mrs. Henderson who comes every year on her wedding anniversary. Her husband passed 2 years ago, but she still comes, says the room holds their memories. And there's Mr. Chen who stays here every month when he visits his daughter at the university. I always make sure he gets his favorite corner room. Nicolas felt a warmth spread through his chest as he listened to Maria speak. Her voice carried a musicality that spoke of genuine care, of someone who saw the humanity in every guest, regardless of their status or behavior. That's beautiful, Nicolas said softly. You're not just cleaning rooms and delivering towels. You're helping to create memories, to preserve connections. That's sacred work. Maria's eyes glistened slightly at his words, and Nicolas could see that it had been a long time since anyone had acknowledged the deeper meaning of her work. The Richardson family stood in uncomfortable silence, clearly recognizing that the conversation had moved beyond their ability to gracefully participate. David Richardson cleared his throat. Well, we should probably get back to our room. Thank you for your time, Mr. Cage. And Maria, we appreciate your service. As the family moved toward the elevator, their earlier arrogance replaced by awkward politeness, Nicolas and Maria found themselves alone in the lobby corner. The young desk clerk had discreetly turned his attention to other tasks, sensing the intimate nature of the moment unfolding. "Thank you," Maria said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "You didn't have to do that." Nicholas shook his head. "Actually, I think I did. Sometimes we're put in situations where silence becomes complicity. I couldn't stand by and watch good people be treated poorly." Maria looked down at her hands, still gripping the handle of her cleaning cart. "It's not the first time something like this has happened. Probably won't be the last. You learn to develop thick skin in this business." "Thick skin is one thing," Nicholas replied gently. "But you shouldn't have to armor your heart against basic human decency." For a moment, they stood in comfortable silence, the sound of the rain creating a gentle soundtrack to their conversation. Nicholas found himself studying Maria's face, seeing past the uniform and the tired eyes to something luminous beneath the surface. "Can I ask you something personal?" Nicholas said. "And please feel free to tell me it's none of my business." Maria looked up at him curiously. "Sure." "When you were describing the guests, talking about Mrs. Henderson and Mr. Chen?" Your voice changed. There was something musical about it, almost like you were telling a story or reciting poetry. "Do you have experience in performance or music?" Maria's eyes widened in surprise, and for the first time since their conversation began, she seemed genuinely caught off guard. How did you? 30 years in the entertainment industry teaches you to recognize natural rhythm and cadence," Nicholas explained. "There's something about the way you speak, the way you choose your words. It's not just professional training, it's artistic." Maria was quiet for a long moment, her fingers tracing absent patterns on the cart handle. When she finally spoke, her voice carried a note of vulnerability that hadn't been there before. "I used to sing," she admitted softly. "A long time ago. I was in the church choir as a girl and I dreamed of... Well, it doesn't matter now. Life took me in a different direction." "What kind of music did you love?" Nicholas asked, his genuine curiosity evident in his tone. "Everything, really. Classical, jazz, folk songs my grandmother taught me, but gospel was always closest to my heart. There's something about those songs that speaks to struggle and hope at the same time." She paused, then added with a self-deprecating smile, "I haven't sung in years, though. Hard to find time for dreams when you're working 2 jobs to keep the lights on." Nicholas felt something stir in his chest, a familiar recognition of talent buried beneath circumstance. Would you sing something now? Just a few notes?" Maria looked around the lobby nervously. "Oh, I couldn't. Not here. What if someone heard?" "Maria," Nicholas said gently, "your voice is a gift. Hiding it doesn't make you humble. It makes the world poorer." She hesitated for a long moment, then began to hum softly, almost under her breath. The melody was hauntingly beautiful, a spiritual that seemed to rise from some deep well of experience and faith. As her confidence grew, she began to add words, her voice barely above a whisper, but carrying a richness and depth that made Nicholas's breath catch in his throat. "Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me." The old hymn filled the space between them with something transcendent. Maria's voice was untrained in the formal sense, but it carried an authenticity and emotional power that no conservatory could teach. It was the voice of someone who had lived the words she was singing, who understood grace not as a theological concept, but as a lifeline thrown in the darkest moments of human experience. When she finished, the lobby seemed almost sacred in its silence. Nicholas felt tears prick at the corners of his eyes, moved not just by the beauty of her voice, but by the courage it had taken for her to share something so personal, so precious. "Maria," he said quietly, "that was extraordinary." She blushed and looked down. "Thank you. I'm out of practice. I'm sure it sounded like truth," Nicholas interrupted. "It sounded like someone who understands that music isn't about perfection. It's about connection, about touching something universal in the human experience." Before Maria could respond, the young desk clerk approached them hesitantly. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but Maria, your shift ended 20 minutes ago. I didn't want you to get in trouble for overtime." Maria glanced at the clock above the reception desk and gasped. "Oh my goodness, I completely lost track of time. I need to get home. My daughter will be wondering where I am." "You have a daughter?" Nicholas asked. "Isabella. She's 16, and she's probably doing homework at the kitchen table right now, waiting for me to come home so we can have dinner together." Maria's face lit up with the kind of love that transformed her features completely. "She's everything to me. She's lucky to have a mother who works so hard for her," Nicholas said. "What does Isabella want to be when she grows up?" "A teacher," Maria replied proudly. "She wants to work with special needs children." "She's been accepted to the state university for next fall, but..." Her smile faltered slightly. "Well, we're still figuring out the financial details." Nicholas felt a familiar stirring, the same instinct that had driven him to approach countless charitable causes over the years. But this time, it felt more personal, more urgent. "Maria, before you go, could I ask you something? Would you be willing to meet me for coffee tomorrow morning? There's something I'd like to discuss with you." Maria looked puzzled but nodded. "I suppose I could meet before my shift starts. There's a small cafe called Morning Glory about 2 blocks from here. Would 8 o'clock work?" "Perfect," Nicholas replied, already formulating a plan that was both ambitious and deeply personal. "And Maria, thank you for reminding me why I love what I do. Sometimes it takes meeting someone with real talent to remember what authentic performance looks like." As Maria gathered her things and headed toward the employee exit, Nicholas found himself standing alone in the lobby, his mind racing with possibilities. He thought about the phone calls he could make, the connections he had built over 3 decades in the entertainment industry, the resources at his disposal that could change not just Maria's life, but her daughter's future as well. But more than that, he thought about the moment when Maria had sung, when her voice had filled the space with something holy and real. It had been a long time since he had been moved so profoundly by a performance, and the fact that it had happened in a hotel lobby in Iowa, delivered by a woman in a housekeeping uniform, felt like a gift from the universe itself. The next morning dawned clear and bright, the storm having passed during the night and left the air crisp with the promise of winter. Nicholas arrived at Morning Glory Cafe 15 minutes early, choosing a corner table where they could talk privately. The cafe was exactly what he had hoped for: small, intimate, with mismatched furniture and local artwork on the walls. The kind of place where conversations happened slowly, over multiple cups of coffee and shared stories. Maria arrived precisely at 8. Having changed from her work uniform into a simple blue dress that brought out the warmth in her dark eyes. She looked nervous but curious, clearly wondering what could be so important that a famous actor would want to meet with a hotel housekeeper. "Thank you for coming," Nicholas said as she sat down across from him. "I hope you don't mind. I took the liberty of ordering you a coffee. The waitress said the house blend was exceptional. That's very kind, Maria replied, wrapping her hands around the warm mug. Mr. Cage, I have to admit, I'm not sure why you wanted to meet. Last night was... Well, it was unexpected, but I don't want you to feel obligated to... Maria, Nicholas interrupted gently. Last night you shared something precious with me. Your voice, your story, your heart. And it got me thinking about opportunity, about how talent and dreams sometimes need a helping hand to flourish. He leaned forward, his expression earnest and focused. I've been in the entertainment industry for 30 years. I've worked with some of the most talented people in the world, and I've also seen incredible gifts go unrecognized because the right doors never opened. Last night when you sang, I heard something that deserves to be shared with the world. Maria's eyes widened, and she set down her coffee cup with a slight tremor in her hands. Mr. Cage, I appreciate the compliment, but I think you might be overestimating. I'm not, Nicholas said firmly, and I want to prove it to you. I've made some phone calls this morning, reached out to some old friends in the music industry. There's a small recording studio in Des Moines, about an hour from here. The owner is a man named James Crawford, and he's agreed to give you a session, free of charge, just to see what happens when you're in a professional environment. Maria stared at him in disbelief. You called people? About me? But why would you? Because talent like yours is rare, Nicola replied. And because I believe that when we're given gifts, we have a responsibility to use them, not just for ourselves, but for everyone who needs to hear what we have to offer. Tears began to form in Maria's eyes, but she shook her head slowly. Mr. Cage, this is incredibly generous, but I can't. I have responsibilities, commitments. Isabella needs a mother who shows her that dreams are worth pursuing, Nicholas said softly. What kind of message does it send to a 16-year-old girl when her mother, who has an extraordinary gift, refuses to even explore the possibility of sharing it? Maria was quiet for a long moment, staring into her coffee as if it might contain the answers to questions she had been avoiding for years. When she finally looked up, her eyes held a mixture of fear and longing that Nicholas recognized from his own early days as an actor. "What if I'm terrible?" she whispered. What if I get in there and freeze up, or my voice cracks, or I forget the words? What if you're wrong about me? Nicholas smiled with the kind of gentle understanding that comes from having faced similar fears countless times. Then you'll be terrible for one afternoon, and you'll go back to your life knowing you tried. But Maria, what if you're not terrible? What if you're everything I think you are and more? What if this is the moment that changes everything? He reached across the table and placed his hand gently over hers. I'm not promising you fame or fortune. I'm not even promising you'll like what you hear when you listen to the playback. But I am promising you that you'll never have to wonder, what if again? Maria closed her eyes, taking a deep, shuddering breath. When she opened them again, something had shifted. Some internal door had creaked open just enough to let in a sliver of light. When would this happen? She asked quietly. This afternoon, if you're willing. James can see us at 2 o'clock. It would just be a few songs, maybe an hour in the studio. No pressure, no commitments beyond showing up and singing the way you did last night. I'd need to arrange for someone to cover my shift, and I'd have to make sure Isabella... I'll cover any expenses, Nicholas said quickly. Lost wages, childcare, transportation. This is my gift to you, Maria, the chance to see yourself the way I see you. For another long moment, Maria sat in silence, her internal struggle playing out across her expressive features. Nicholas could see the lifetime of practical concerns warring with something deeper, something that had been buried, but never quite extinguished. Finally, she nodded, so slightly that Nicholas almost missed it. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay, let's do it." The drive to Des Moines was filled with nervous energy and tentative conversation. Maria had arranged for her neighbor to pick up Isabella from school and help with homework, and she had called in a favor with a co-worker to cover the afternoon shift. As they traveled the familiar highways of Iowa, she found herself opening up to Nicholas in ways that surprised her. She told him about her childhood in a small town in Texas, about the church where she had first discovered her voice, about the dreams she had nurtured as a young woman before life's practical demands took precedence. She spoke about Isabella's father, who had left when their daughter was 3, and about the struggle of raising a child alone while working multiple jobs. "Sometimes I wonder if I made the right choices," she admitted as they passed golden cornfields stretching to the horizon. When Isabella was little, I had a chance to audition for a local theater company. But the rehearsals were at night, and I couldn't afford childcare, and the pay would have been less than what I made cleaning houses. So I didn't go. "Do you regret it?" Nicholas asked gently. "I regret not trying," Maria replied. "I regret letting fear make the decision for me instead of faith." Nicholas nodded, understanding the weight of such admissions. "You know, I almost quit acting 3 times in my 20s. The rejection, the financial uncertainty, the constant questioning of whether I was good enough, it nearly broke me. The only thing that kept me going was the knowledge that I'd rather fail at something I loved than succeed at something that felt meaningless." "But you had talent," Maria protested. "You had training, connections." "I had hunger," Nicholas corrected. "Everything else came later. The talent was just the starting point." The willingness to keep going despite the obstacles, that's what made the difference. When they arrived at Crawford Recording Studios, Maria's nervousness intensified. The building was modest from the outside, a converted warehouse in an industrial part of Des Moines, but inside it hummed with the kind of creative energy that had produced countless albums over the past 2 decades. James Crawford was a man in his 50s with kind eyes and calloused hands that spoke of decades spent working with musicians of every genre and skill level. He greeted them warmly, showing no surprise at the unusual nature of their visit. "Nicholas told me you have a gift for gospel and spiritual music," James said to Maria as he led them into the main recording room. "This is a judgment-free zone, so don't worry about perfection. Just let your voice tell its story." The recording booth was smaller than Maria had imagined, with padded walls and a single microphone positioned in front of a music stand. Through the glass partition, she could see the control room where Nicholas and James would listen, their faces illuminated by the glow of mixing boards and computer screens. "I don't know where to start," Maria admitted, her voice shaking slightly as she adjusted the headphones. "Start with what feels natural," James's voice crackled through the studio monitors. Pretend you're singing for your daughter, or in your church, or just for yourself. The microphone is just there to capture what you're already carrying." Maria closed her eyes and began to hum, the same melody she had shared with Nicola the night before. But this time, surrounded by professional equipment and the knowledge that her voice was being preserved, something magical happened. Her natural inhibitions began to fall away, replaced by something deeper and more authentic. She began to sing Amazing Grace again, but this time her voice soared with confidence and power. The acoustics of the studio enhanced every nuance, every emotional inflection, turning the familiar hymn into something fresh and deeply personal. When she reached the verse about being lost and then found, her voice broke slightly with emotion, but rather than detracting from the performance, it added a layer of authenticity that made the recording transcendent. In the control room, Nicolas felt chills run down his spine. Through the studio monitors, Maria's voice filled the space with a kind of sacred electricity. This wasn't just good singing, this was the kind of performance that reached through the speakers and grabbed the listener by the heart. James, who had recorded everyone from Grammy winners to church choirs, found himself leaning forward in his chair, completely captivated. He had expected competence, perhaps even talent. But what he was hearing was something far rarer, a voice that carried the weight of lived experience and transformed it into pure music. When Maria finished the first song, the control room fell silent, except for the gentle hum of electronics. Through the glass, she could see Nicolas and James staring at her with expressions of awe and disbelief. "Maria," James's voice came through the headphones. "That was extraordinary. How do you feel about trying another song? Maybe something up-tempo this time?" Encouraged by their reaction, Maria nodded and launched into "Oh Happy Day," a gospel standard that allowed her to showcase her range and rhythmic sense. Her voice danced through the melody, with a joy and freedom that seemed to lift everyone in the studio. By the time she reached the song's soaring climax, even the sound engineer had stopped what he was doing to listen. For the next hour, Maria sang song after song, each one revealing new dimensions of her talent. She performed traditional spirituals with reverent beauty, contemporary gospel with passionate intensity, and even a secular ballad that showcased her ability to convey deep emotion without relying on religious themes. When they finally finished, Maria emerged from the recording booth with tears streaming down her face, but they were tears of joy and release rather than sadness. For the first time in years, she had allowed herself to be fully present in her gift, to surrender to the music without worrying about practical consequences or other people's expectations. "I can't believe that was me," she whispered, accepting the tissues that James offered her. "It was definitely you," Nicolas said, his own eyes moist with emotion. "And it was beautiful beyond words." James was already reviewing the digital files, his experienced ear cataloging the extraordinary session they had just completed. "Maria, I've been in this business for 25 years, and I can tell you with absolute certainty that what just happened in there was special. Really special." He turned to Nicolas with an expression of professional excitement. "You were right to bring her here. This is the kind of voice that could make a real impact, not just in gospel music but across genres." There's a universality to her emotional expression that transcends traditional boundaries. Maria looked back and forth between the two men, hardly able to process what she was hearing. "But I work at a hotel. I don't have any experience with the music business, any connections." "You have something more valuable than connections," Nicolas said firmly. "You have authenticity. In an industry full of manufactured personalities and auto-tuned vocals, You have the real thing. That's what audiences are hungry for, even if they don't always know it. James nodded enthusiastically. Nicholas is right. And the beauty of the music industry today is that there are more paths to success than ever before. Independent labels, streaming platforms, social media. Talent can find its audience in ways that weren't possible even 10 years ago. He ejected a CD from the recording equipment and handed it to Maria. Take this home. Listen to it with your daughter. Let it sink in. Then we can talk about next steps, if you're interested. As they drove back to Cedar Falls, the CD playing softly through the car speakers, Maria found herself in a state of quiet amazement. The voice coming through the speakers was unmistakably hers, but somehow it sounded fuller, richer, more powerful than she had ever imagined possible. "Nicholas," she said softly, as they passed the familiar landmarks of her everyday life. "Why did you do this for me? You don't even know me." "We met 12 hours ago." Nicholas was quiet for a moment, considering the question seriously. "You know, I've been asking myself the same thing, and I think it comes down to this. Sometimes the universe puts people in our path not by accident, but because we need each other in ways we don't initially understand." He glanced at her briefly before returning his attention to the road. "Last night, when I saw how those people were treating you, it reminded me of something I'd forgotten. That dignity isn't about what you do for a living or how much money you make. It's about how you treat people, especially when you think no one important is watching. But I still don't understand why you'd go to such lengths." "Because," Nicholas interrupted gently, 30 years ago, someone took a chance on me. A casting director named Sarah Chen saw something in my audition that nobody else did. She fought for me to get a small role in a film that changed my life. She didn't have to do that. She could have gone with a safer choice, someone with more experience or better connections. But she believed in potential over proven track record. He smiled at the memory. Sarah died 5 years ago, and I never got to fully repay her kindness. But maybe that was never the point. Maybe the point was to pass it forward, to be the person who recognizes talent and creates opportunity for someone else. Maria felt tears welling up again, overwhelmed by the generosity and the profound chain of kindness that had led to this moment. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now you go home to Isabella, and you decide what you want to do with this gift you've been given," Nicholas replied. "No pressure, no expectations. Just the knowledge that you have options you didn't have yesterday." When they arrived back at the Grandview Hotel, the sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. Maria sat in the passenger seat for a moment, still holding the CD, still processing the transformation that had occurred in the span of a single afternoon. "Thank you," she said finally, the words carrying far more weight than their simplicity suggested. "Thank you," Nicholas replied, "for reminding me why I fell in love with music and performance in the first place, for showing me what authentic artistry looks like." As Maria walked toward her car, she turned back one last time. "Will I see you again?" Nicholas smiled, but there was something bittersweet in his expression. "I'm flying back to Los Angeles tomorrow morning. But Maria, I have a feeling this isn't the end of your story. It's just the beginning." That evening, Maria sat at her kitchen table with Isabella, the CD player positioned between them as they listened to the recording for the third time. Isabella, a mature and thoughtful 16-year-old with her mother's expressive eyes, had been speechless after the first playthrough. "Mom," Isabella said finally, "I had no idea you could sing like that. I mean, I knew you had a nice voice, but this is something else entirely." Maria reached across the table and took her daughter's hand. "I didn't know either, sweetheart. I haven't sung like that in years, not since you were very small. Why did you stop?" Isabella asked, her question carrying the genuine curiosity of someone trying to understand the complex choices adults make. "Because I was scared," Maria admitted. "Scared of failing, scared of not being good enough, scared of what would happen if I pursued something impractical when we had bills to pay and a life to build." Isabella was quiet for a moment, then asked, "Are you still scared?" "Terrified," Maria laughed, surprised by her own honesty. "But also excited in a way I haven't been for a long time. Your whole life, I've told you to follow your dreams, to not let anyone convince you that you're not capable of extraordinary things. Maybe it's time I started taking my own advice." Over the following weeks, Maria and Isabella researched the music industry together, learning about independent record labels, streaming platforms, and the various paths modern musicians could take to share their work with the world. They discovered that James Crawford was connected to a small but respected gospel label called Sanctuary Records, which specialized in authentic, spiritually grounded music. With Isabella's encouragement, Maria reached out to James, who arranged for her to send her demo to Sanctuary's A&R department. The response was immediate and enthusiastic. Within 2 weeks, she had a meeting scheduled with the label's founder, a woman named Ruth Williams, who had built her company on the belief that music should nourish the soul as well as entertain. "Your voice reminds me why I got into this business," Ruth told Maria during their first meeting in a small office above a Christian bookstore in Iowa City. "There's a hunger in the market for authentic gospel music, for voices that carry real spiritual weight rather than just vocal acrobatics." Sanctuary offered Maria a modest recording contract, nothing that would make her wealthy overnight, but something that would allow her to record a full album while maintaining her day job at H. Continuar, the hotel. The advance was enough to help with Isabella's college expenses, and the flexible recording schedule meant Maria could pursue her music without abandoning her responsibilities. The recording process took place over several months, with Maria traveling to Des Moines twice a week to work with James at the studio. Each session revealed new depths to her artistry, as she worked with professional musicians who understood how to complement her natural gifts rather than overshadow them. Isabella often accompanied her mother to the recording sessions, watching with fascination as songs took shape through multiple takes and careful arrangement. She helped choose which songs to include on the album, offering the perspective of a younger generation that was hungry for authentic spiritual expression. "Mom, when you sing Wade in the Water, it's like you're telling our family's story," Isabella observed during one late-night listening session. "Like you're honoring all the women who came before us, who sang those same songs to give themselves strength." Maria felt a deep pride in her daughter's understanding, recognizing that this musical journey was teaching Isabella valuable lessons about courage, perseverance, and the importance of honoring one's gifts. The album, titled Grace Found Me, was released 6 months after Maria's first recording session. It was a collection of traditional spirituals, contemporary gospel, and 2 original songs that Maria had written during the recording process. The cover featured a simple photograph of Maria sitting in the Grandview Hotel lobby, her housekeeping uniform visible but her expression radiant with quiet dignity. The release was modest by industry standards, but the response was immediate and powerful. Gospel radio stations across the Midwest began playing tracks from the album, and online reviews praised Maria's authentic spiritual presence and voice that carries the weight of lived experience. The most meaningful response came from listeners who reached out directly to share how Maria's music had touched their lives. A nurse in Chicago wrote to say that "Wade in the Water" had given her strength during the darkest days of the pandemic. A truck driver from Tennessee called to say that listening to Maria's version of Amazing Grace had helped him through his wife's cancer treatment. A college student from California emailed to express how "Precious Lord" had helped her reconnect with her faith after years of doubt. "This is what Nicholas meant," Maria told Isabella one evening as they read through messages from fans. "It's not about fame or fortune. It's about using your gifts to serve something larger than yourself." 3 months after the album's release, Maria received an unexpected phone call. It was Nicholas, calling from a film set in New Mexico where he was shooting his latest project. "I just wanted you to know that I heard your album," he said, his voice warm with pride and emotion. "Maria, it's everything I hoped it would be and more. You've created something truly special." "I can never thank you enough," Maria replied, feeling tears well up at the sound of his voice. "Not just for that day at the recording studio, but for seeing something in me that I couldn't see in myself." "You always had it," Nicholas replied gently. "I just helped you remember. But Maria, there's something else I wanted to share with you. The film I'm working on now, it's about second chances, about people who discover their true calling later in life. The director heard your album and wants to use Grace Found Me for a pivotal scene. Would you be interested?" The synchronicity was almost overwhelming. Maria's music would be featured in a Nicolas Cage film, completing a circle that had begun with a chance encounter in a hotel lobby. The licensing fee would be enough to secure Isabella's college tuition, fulfilling the practical dreams that had always motivated Maria's choices. But more than the financial benefit, the opportunity represented a kind of validation that Maria had never dared to hope for. Her voice, her story, her gift would be shared with audiences around the world, carrying a message of hope and redemption that transcended entertainment. The film, titled Never Too Late, premiered the following year at the Sundance Film Festival. Maria and Isabella attended as Nicholas's guests, walking the red carpet in simple but elegant dresses, representing dignity and authenticity in an industry often associated with artifice and pretension. During the screening, when Maria's voice filled the theater during the film's emotional climax, she felt a profound sense of completion. The song supported a scene in which Nicholas's character, a former music teacher, helps a struggling student discover her own voice. The parallel to their real-life story was unmistakable, but it felt natural rather than contrived. After the screening, during the reception, Maria found herself surrounded by industry professionals who had been moved by both her music and her story. A documentary filmmaker expressed interest in chronicling her journey from hotel housekeeper to recording artist. A booking agent discussed the possibility of a concert tour focusing on intimate venues where her music could be experienced in settings that honored its spiritual nature. "This is surreal," Maria confided to Nicholas as they stood on the reception balcony, looking out at the snow-covered mountains of Utah. "A year ago, I was worrying about overtime pay and whether Isabella would be able to afford college. Now people are talking about tours and documentaries. Success has a way of changing everything except what matters most," Nicholas replied thoughtfully. "You're still the same person who sang in that hotel lobby, who treated difficult guests with grace and dignity, who raised an extraordinary daughter while working 2 jobs. The platform is bigger now, but the heart is the same." Isabella, who had spent the evening in animated conversation with young filmmakers and musicians, joined them on the balcony. At 17, she had grown into a confident and articulate young woman who had learned valuable lessons about perseverance and authenticity from watching her mother's transformation. "Mom, there's someone inside who wants to meet you," Isabella said excitedly. "She's a professor at Juilliard, and she heard your album. She wants to talk about you maybe doing some teaching, working with students who are interested in gospel and spiritual music." Maria looked at her daughter with amazement. Teaching had always been a secret dream, the idea of passing on not just vocal techniques but the deeper understanding of music as a form of spiritual expression and human connection. "You see," Nicholas said with a gentle smile, "the universe keeps opening doors. The question is always the same: are you brave enough to walk through them?" As they stood together on that balcony, surrounded by mountains and stars, Maria reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. It had begun with dignity under pressure, with maintaining grace in the face of disrespect. It had been nurtured by unexpected kindness, by someone who recognized talent and was willing to create opportunity. But most importantly, it had required her own courage to believe that dreams deferred are not always dreams denied, that it's never too late to discover who you were meant to become. Two years later, Maria had established a modest but fulfilling career that balanced recording, teaching, and occasional performances. She had released a second album, Songs My Grandmother Sang, which explored the musical traditions passed down through generations of women in her family. Isabella was thriving at the State University, pursuing her dream of becoming a special education teacher while also studying music therapy as a minor. The Grand View Hotel had become an unexpected beneficiary of Maria's success. The lobby where she first sang for Nicholas was now adorned with a small plaque commemorating the moment, and the hotel had experienced a surge in bookings from people who wanted to visit the place where Amazing Grace had been rediscovered. Maria still worked at the hotel, but now as a part-time coordinator for special events, helping to create the kind of memorable experiences that honored the dignity of every guest. The Richardson family had never returned, but Maria often thought of them with compassion rather than resentment, understanding that people who treat others poorly are usually struggling with their own insecurities and fears. On the second anniversary of their first meeting, Nicholas called Maria from his home in Los Angeles. They had maintained a friendship that transcended the initial mentor-student dynamic, built on mutual respect and shared understanding of what it meant to use art as a form of service. "I have something to tell you," Nicholas said, his voice carrying a note of excitement that Maria had learned to recognize. "Remember Sarah Chen, the casting director I told you about? The one who took a chance on me when I was starting out?" "Of course," Maria replied. "You said she changed your life." "Well, I've been working with her family to establish a foundation in her memory, the Sarah Chen Foundation for Emerging Artists. We want to identify talented people who need support and opportunity to develop their gifts, regardless of their background or current circumstances. Maria felt a warm anticipation building in her chest. That sounds wonderful, Nicholas. We want you to be our first official success story, Nicholas continued. But more than that, we want you to help us identify other people like you, people with extraordinary talent who just need someone to believe in them and open the right doors. The invitation was both humbling and inspiring. Maria would become not just a beneficiary of unexpected kindness, but an agent of it, helping to create opportunities for others who might be singing in hotel lobbies or bus stations or church basements, waiting for someone to recognize their gifts. I would be honored, Maria said softly, more honored than I can express. Over the following months, Maria traveled throughout the Midwest, visiting small towns and urban neighborhoods, listening for voices that carried the same authentic power she had discovered in herself. She found them in surprising places. A mechanic in Detroit who sang opera while working on engines, a retired teacher in rural Wisconsin who had written dozens of folk songs about prairie life, a teenage mother in St. Louis, whose rap lyrics combined social consciousness with spiritual depth. Each discovery reinforced Maria's understanding that talent is not limited by circumstance, that extraordinary gifts can flourish in the most ordinary settings if given the right support and encouragement. The Sarah Chen Foundation's first annual showcase took place in Des Moines, in the same recording studio where Maria had first heard her voice through professional equipment. Five emerging artists performed that night, each one representing a different musical genre and background, but all united by the authentic power of their artistic expression. Isabella, now a junior in college, served as the event's coordinator, applying the organizational skills she had learned from watching her mother balance multiple responsibilities while pursuing her dreams. The evening was a testament to what could happen when talent met opportunity, when established artists chose to lift up rather than compete with emerging voices. Nicholas attended the showcase, bringing with him several industry professionals who were always searching for authentic artists with compelling stories. But the real audience was composed of family members, friends, and community members who had supported these artists through years of struggle and doubt. "This is what it's really about," Maria said to Nicholas as they watched a young man from rural Iowa perform an original country song about his grandfather's farm. Not just individual success, but creating a network of support that helps people believe in themselves and their gifts. "Sarah would have loved this," Nicholas replied, his eyes moist with emotion. "She always said that the best art comes from people who understand struggle, who have something real to say about the human experience." As the evening concluded, Maria took the stage for a final performance. She had chosen to sing "Amazing Grace" again, the same song that had started her journey. But this time, her voice carried new layers of meaning. She sang not just as someone who had been found, but as someone who was now helping others find themselves. The audience, composed of people from every walk of life, joined in for the final verse, their voices blending together in a harmony that transcended musical training or vocal perfection. It was the sound of community, of shared hope, of recognition that every person carries something valuable within them, waiting to be discovered and shared. After the performance, As people lingered in the studio sharing stories and making connections, Maria found herself in conversation with a young journalist who was covering the event for a regional magazine. "What would you say to someone who feels like it's too late to pursue their dreams?" the journalist asked. "Someone who thinks they've missed their chance?" Maria considered the question carefully, thinking about all the people she had met over the past 2 years, all the stories of delayed, but not denied aspirations. "I would say that as long as you're breathing, as long as you have something to offer the world, it's not too late," she replied. "But I would also say that pursuing your dreams isn't just about personal fulfillment. It's about recognizing that your gifts were given to you for a reason, and that reason usually involves serving others, making their lives richer or more meaningful." She paused, looking around the studio at the diverse group of people who had gathered to celebrate authentic artistry. Sometimes the most beautiful music comes from voices that have lived long enough to understand what the songs really mean, that have experienced enough joy and sorrow to sing with true authority. The journalist scribbled notes, clearly moved by the depth of Maria's response. "And what about the role of those who recognize and support talent in others? How important is that?" Maria's eyes found Nicolas across the room, where he was deep in conversation with one of the evening's performers, offering encouragement and practical advice with the same generosity he had shown her. "Essential," she said firmly. "We all need someone who sees us more clearly than we see ourselves, who believes in our potential even when we doubt it. But I think the real magic happens when those who have been helped become the ones who help others. That's how individual kindness becomes lasting change." As the evening wound down and people began to say their goodbyes, Maria felt a profound sense of gratitude wash over her. Not just for her own transformation, but for the opportunity to be part of something larger, something that honored the dignity and potential of every human being. Isabella appeared at her side, having finished helping to pack up the equipment and coordinate rides for the various performers. "Mom, how does it feel to be living your dream?" Isabella asked with a smile. Maria put her arm around her daughter, still amazed sometimes by the mature and thoughtful young woman Isabella had become. "You know what's funny?" Maria replied. "I thought my dream was about singing, about having my voice heard. But I think the real dream was about connection, about using whatever gifts I have to make life a little more beautiful for other people." She looked around the studio one more time, at the place where she had first understood the true power of her voice. "2 years ago, I was afraid that pursuing music would take me away from what mattered most, providing for you, being a good mother, maintaining the stability we had worked so hard to create. But it turns out that following your authentic path doesn't take you away from what matters. It takes you deeper into it." As they walked to the car, the cool Iowa evening wrapping around them like a gentle embrace, Maria thought about the hotel lobby where her journey had begun. She thought about the Richardson family, whose unkindness had ultimately led to the revelation of her gift. She thought about Nicolas, whose recognition and support had changed not just her life, but her understanding of how one person's generosity could ripple outward to affect countless others. Most of all, she thought about the voice that had always been within her, waiting not just to be heard, but to serve as a bridge between hearts. A reminder that every person carries something sacred that the world needs to experience. The next morning, Maria returned to work at the Grandview Hotel, not because she had to, but because she chose to. Her role had evolved into something that combined her passion for hospitality with her understanding of human dignity. She had become known throughout the hospitality industry as someone who could transform a simple hotel stay into a meaningful experience, who understood that service at its highest level was about recognizing and honoring the worth of every guest. Her office, a small room adjacent to the lobby, was filled with letters from guests who had been touched by their stay at the Grandview. Some wrote about the fresh flowers that appeared in their room during difficult times. Others mentioned the way Maria had listened when they needed to talk, offering not just professional courtesy, but genuine human compassion. One letter, from an elderly man who had stayed at the hotel during his wife's final illness, particularly moved her. "Dear Maria, I don't know if you remember me, but I stayed at your hotel for 3 weeks last fall while my wife was in the hospital across town. Every morning when I came down to the lobby, you would ask how she was doing, and you always listened to my answer like it really mattered to you. On the day she passed away, you were the first person to offer me a hug, and somehow you knew exactly what I needed to hear. Your kindness during the darkest time of my life reminded me that angels don't always have wings. Sometimes they wear hotel uniforms and carry cleaning supplies. Thank you for treating a stranger like family when family was exactly what I needed." Reading letters like this, Maria understood that her music career and her hotel work were not separate pursuits, but different expressions of the same calling: to use her gifts in service of others, to create moments of beauty and connection in a world that often felt fragmented and impersonal. On a quiet Tuesday afternoon in November, exactly 2 years after her first encounter with Nicolas, Maria was arranging flowers in the lobby when she noticed a familiar figure approaching the front desk. It was a young woman in her 20s, clearly nervous, carrying a worn guitar case and looking around the lobby with a mixture of hope and uncertainty. Something about the woman's demeanor reminded Maria of herself, the way she held herself with quiet dignity despite obvious financial struggles, the careful way she spoke to the desk clerk, the unconscious way her fingers moved as if practicing chord progressions on an invisible guitar. Maria approached the woman with a warm smile. "Are you checking in?" "Yes, ma'am," the woman replied, her voice soft but clear. "I have a reservation under Jennifer Walsh." "I'm here for an audition tomorrow at one of the music venues downtown." "That's wonderful," Maria said genuinely. "What kind of music do you perform?" Jennifer's face lit up with the kind of passion that Maria recognized immediately. "Folk music, mostly. Songs about small-town life, family stories, that kind of thing. I know it's not very commercial, but it's what comes naturally to me." "The most authentic art rarely feels commercial at first," Maria replied, thinking of her own journey. "But authentic always finds its audience eventually." As they talked, Maria learned that Jennifer had driven from a small town in Nebraska, using her savings to pay for the hotel room and the chance to audition for a local venue that featured emerging singer-songwriters. She was working as a waitress back home, writing songs in her spare time, dreaming of a career in music but unsure how to make the transition from hobbyist to professional. "Would you like to have dinner with my daughter and me tonight?" Maria asked impulsively. "We'd love to hear about your music, and maybe we could offer some encouragement before your audition tomorrow." Jennifer's eyes widened with surprise and gratitude. That's very kind of you, but I don't want to impose. You wouldn't be imposing, Maria assured her. Sometimes the best preparation for following your dreams is spending time with people who believe in them. That evening, in Maria's modest apartment above a local bakery, Jennifer shared her music with Maria and Isabella. Her songs were simple but profound, capturing the rhythms and relationships of rural life with a poet's eye for detail and a storyteller's understanding of human nature. "You have something special," Maria told her after Jennifer finished a particularly moving song about her grandmother's garden. "Your voice carries the landscape you come from, but also something universal that people everywhere can connect with." "But I don't know how to break into the music business," Jennifer admitted. "I don't have connections or experience with recording or any of that." Maria and Isabella exchanged a knowing look. "What if I told you that connections can be created, that experience can be gained, and that the most important thing you need, authentic talent, you already have?" Over the course of the evening, Maria shared her own story, from hotel housekeeper to recording artist, emphasizing not just the opportunities that had been offered to her, but the courage it had taken to accept them. "The Sarah Chen Foundation is always looking for emerging artists to support," Maria explained. "Would you be interested in recording a demo? No pressure, no commitments, just the chance to hear yourself in a professional setting." Jennifer's reaction was almost identical to Maria's 2 years earlier. Disbelief, gratitude, and a fear of hoping for something that seemed too good to be true. "Why would you do that for me?" Jennifer asked. "We just met." "Because someone did it for me," Maria replied simply. "And because I've learned that gifts are meant to be shared, not hoarded." The next morning, Maria accompanied Jennifer to her audition, offering moral support and the kind of encouragement that comes from someone who understands both the terror and the exhilaration of putting yourself forward artistically. Jennifer's performance was strong and heartfelt, earning her a regular slot at the venue's weekly open mic nights and an invitation to return for a full concert when she had developed a larger repertoire. But more importantly, she had connected with Maria and the network of support that surrounded the Sarah Chen Foundation. Within a month, she was in James Crawford's studio, recording her first professional demo. Within 6 months, she had been connected with a small independent label that specialized in contemporary folk music. Jennifer's success became another link in the chain of kindness and opportunity that had begun with Nicholas's recognition of Maria's talent. Each artist who was helped by the foundation was encouraged to become a scout for the next generation of emerging talent, creating an ever-expanding network of support and encouragement. 5 years after that first encounter in the Grandview Hotel lobby, Maria stood on the stage of the Grand Ole Opry in Nashville, Tennessee. She was there not as a performer, but as the recipient of an award recognizing her contributions to supporting emerging artists in American roots music. The auditorium was filled with musicians, industry professionals, and music lovers who understood that behind every successful artist was often a network of people who had believed in their potential and created opportunities for growth. Nicholas was in the audience, along with Isabella, who had graduated college and was now pursuing a master's degree in music therapy while working part-time for the Sarah Chen Foundation. James Crawford was there, as was Ruth Williams from Sanctuary Records and dozens of artists who had been touched by the foundation's work. When I accepted this award, Maria said from the podium, her voice carrying easily through the historic venue, I thought about all the people who should really be sharing this stage with me. The hotel guests who treated me with kindness when others didn't. My daughter, who encouraged me to pursue dreams I thought I had missed. The recording engineer who stayed late to get the perfect take. The radio programmers who believed in authentic music over manufactured hits. She paused, looking out at the audience with the same grace and dignity that had characterized her throughout her journey. But most of all, I thought about a man who could have easily walked past a difficult situation in a hotel lobby, who instead chose to see dignity where others saw only service, who recognized talent where others saw only a uniform. She found Nicolas in the audience, their eyes meeting across the distance. Nicolas Cage taught me that kindness is not just about helping someone in need. It's about seeing potential where others see problems, about creating opportunities where none existed before, about understanding that when we lift others up, we lift ourselves up too. The applause was long and heartfelt, but Maria held up her hand to continue. This award represents not just one person's journey, but the power of community, of recognition, of believing that everyone has something valuable to contribute to the world. In the 5 years since the Sarah Chen Foundation was established, we've helped over 200 emerging artists take their next steps toward professional music careers. But more importantly, we've created a culture where established artists see themselves as mentors and supporters, not just competitors. She lifted the crystal award, letting it catch the stage lights. To everyone who has ever doubted their own worth, who has ever wondered if their dreams matter, who has ever felt invisible in their own life, you are not invisible to those who know how to see. Your gifts matter, your voice matters, your story matters, and there are people in the world who are waiting to help you discover just how much you have to offer. As Maria left the stage, the audience rose in a standing ovation that seemed to go on forever. But the moment that meant the most to her came when she reached the wings, where Isabella was waiting with tears in her eyes and arms open wide. "Mom," Isabella whispered as they embraced. "You did it. You really did it." "We did it," Maria corrected gently. "All of us, together." Later that evening, at the reception following the awards ceremony, Maria found herself in conversation with a young music journalist who was writing a feature story about the Sarah Chen Foundation. "What do you think is the most important lesson you've learned through this journey?" the journalist asked. Maria considered the question while watching the diverse crowd of people who had gathered to celebrate the power of music to transform lives. "I think the most important lesson is that talent without opportunity is just potential energy," she said thoughtfully. "But when you combine authentic gifts with genuine support, with people who believe in you and are willing to create pathways forward, that potential energy becomes kinetic. It becomes movement, change, impact." She gestured toward a corner of the room where Nicolas was deep in conversation with several young musicians, offering advice and making introductions with the same generous spirit he had shown her. "But I've also learned that being helped is just the beginning. The real fulfillment comes when you become the person who helps others, when your success becomes a platform for lifting up the next generation of dreamers." The journalist nodded, scribbling notes. "Do you ever wonder how different your life would have been if you hadn't met Nicolas Cage that night?" Maria smiled, thinking of all the moments and choices that had led to this evening, this career, this sense of purpose that filled her days. "I think about it sometimes," she admitted, "but I've come to believe that when you're ready to grow, when you're ready to step into your authentic purpose, the universe conspires to send you the teachers and opportunities you need." Nicholas was my teacher that night, but I was also ready to be taught. I was ready to believe that I deserved something better than just surviving. She paused, watching Isabella across the room as she coordinated interviews with some of the Foundation's scholarship recipients. The real question isn't what would have happened if we hadn't met. The real question is, what happens when each of us chooses to be the kind of person who recognizes potential in others, who creates opportunities instead of waiting for them, who believes in dreams even when they seem impossible? As the evening wound down and people began to say their goodbyes, Maria found herself standing once again with Nicholas, this time on the balcony of the Grand Ole Opry overlooking the Nashville skyline. "Do you remember what you said to me that first night?" Maria asked. "About storms revealing character?" Nicholas nodded. "I do. I think you were right, but not in the way either of us expected. The storm that night didn't reveal my character so much as it revealed the possibility for transformation that exists in every moment, every encounter, every choice to see the best in someone else." She looked out at the city lights, thinking of all the dreamers and artists who were at that moment practicing in small apartments, writing songs in late-night diners, hoping for their own moment of recognition. The Sarah Chen Foundation has become something neither of us could have imagined that night. But I think Sarah would be proud, don't you? Proud that her kindness to you has rippled outward to touch so many other lives. "I know she would be," Nicholas replied softly. "And I think she would be especially proud of you, Maria. Not just for your music, but for the way you've used your platform to create opportunities for others." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. Two people whose lives had been forever changed by a chance encounter in a hotel lobby, by the decision to treat dignity as more important than status, by the recognition that true success is measured not in personal achievement, but in the lives you touch along the way.
"Thank you," Maria said finally, the words carrying the weight of 5 years of gratitude and friendship. "Thank you," Nicholas replied, "for showing me what courage looks like, for reminding me why I fell in love with authentic artistry, for proving that kindness is never wasted, even when we can't see its immediate impact."
As they headed back inside to rejoin the celebration, Maria thought about the speech she had given earlier, about recognition and potential and the power of believing in someone's dreams. But mostly she thought about tomorrow and the next day and all the days to come when she would continue to listen for voices that needed to be heard, for talents that needed to be nurtured, for dreams that needed someone to believe in them. The journey that had begun with a song in a hotel lobby had become something far larger than either of them could have imagined, a network of support, a culture of mentorship, a testament to the profound impact that one person's kindness can have when it encounters another person's willingness to grow. And in hotel lobbies and coffee shops and recording studios across America, the ripples continued to spread, touching lives that would never know the story of how it all began, but would benefit nonetheless from the simple truth that had started it all. Every person carries something sacred within them, and the world becomes more beautiful when we help each other discover what that something is. Never underestimate a kind heart. The person you help may change not just their own life, but the lives of countless others yet to come. If this story moved you, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever experienced a moment when someone's unexpected kindness changed the trajectory of your life? Or perhaps you've been the person who offered support to someone who needed it. We'd love to hear your stories of how small acts of recognition and encouragement can create lasting change. Remember, we all have the power to be someone else's Nicolas Cage, the person who sees potential where others see problems, who creates opportunities where none existed before. Until next time, keep believing in the power of authentic kindness to transform the world, one encounter at a time.